So, the breakup of the U.S. government. Now, some people are predicting this, that the next crisis will precipitate the U.S. collapsing into, like, separate geographical-based areas. Dmitry Orlov is one that comes to mind. Now, I don't think that this would necessarily be a bad thing. I really don't. Now, I know there's some people who are going to disagree and say, yeah, it's the USA, man, come on, we gotta hold it together, but really, I mean, the bigger the government, kind of the worse off it is in terms of individual liberty and just the way everything's managed. And take a look at the family unit, for example. You know, typically, as long as you're not completely dysfunctional, families are run pretty efficiently. There's savings, people live within their means. There's no, quote-unquote wars. And look at something like the Civil War, though. This is why I'm skeptical of this ever happening. Okay, the Civil War was divided along a particular line, and Lincoln said, I don't care, it's not going to happen. And when you take that stance in a war, that means that I'm basically going to kill any single person that's willing to fight for your cause, or until you surrender. That's a pretty hard stance, and it was the bloodiest war in U.S. history. And that was just to keep the United States together. So, that's something to consider. There's a couple possibilities, I think, that it could happen. One would just be a catastrophic breakdown of infrastructure, meaning like grid down type scenario. And as much as Raw Dog says that's never going to happen, there are a couple methods that could easily happen. If you read the book 1 Second After, or if you understand that the sun could just throw us a curveball, I mean, that's a possibility. And I think at that point, all communication breaks down, and your government gets really, really small, really fast, because it's basically a line of sight. The other, I consider much less likely, but that would be like a coup-type scenario. And it's similar to what happened in the Soviet Union. It wasn't necessarily a coup, but it's just their leadership and everything fell apart, and their currency collapsed, and you saw the breakup of the Soviet Union. That happened pretty quick. But I consider that a little bit less likely, because just the fact that the U.S. is a completely different circumstance, and we've been together as a nation for a lot longer. Now, why I think that this would be a good thing is the geographical areas in the U.S. are really diversified. You got desert in the south. California produces a lot of food. On the East Coast, it's a totally different dynamic, and same with the North, and the different resources. And I think that if locally we were able to manage these resources better, it would be a much more prosperous society. And it's kind of the same thing that the Euro is going through, right? You take all these different societies and try to smash them all together and just say, make it work. Well, it doesn't really work like that. I think the Euro is going to break up. I'll touch on that in another video. But the breakup of the U.S., I don't know, a good thing. I mean, of course, there would be a lot of chaos in the meantime, and it would probably take years for everything to calm down. But I think once it did, assuming that you survived and your relatives did, I think the generations to follow would end up living a much better life. Just in terms of individual liberty. Of course, the whole scope of everything would change. The technological society and advances, that would probably go away for a while. But, yeah, it's definitely something to consider. I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility. And, I mean, you just look at the land mass of this country has gotten so big, and look at how inefficient the federal government is, and what they're doing on your behalf all over the world. I mean, would it really necessarily be a terrible thing? I don't know.